In this video I want to share with you guys how I funded my van using an overdraft, borrowing a little bit of money, which allowed me to move out of my apartment, save a load of money, get some money in the bank, and then eventually I was able to quit my job and go traveling the world, which is exactly what I'm doing now. I want to show you guys how you can do the same thing. Now obviously you're going to need to be eligible for an overdraft or to be able to get a loan or to be able to borrow some money. The reason that I'm creating this video is because with my previous videos, how I told you guys how I moved out of my apartment and I lived in the van and built it for 18 months, some people said to me, well, I don't have any money. Now here's the truth, I did not have any money. I used my overdraft, I borrowed a bit of money, but I didn't even have to borrow money from a friend. I could have just maxed out my £4,000 overdraft, bought the van, and that would have then allowed me to move out of my apartment and save me over £800 a month. And you can do exactly the same thing. And I'm going to show you all of the transactions that I did over that period. It was basically the 20th of September 2022, which is pretty much 2 years to the date that I moved out of my apartment, and then I built that van over an 18-month period. But it took me basically 3 months to get out of my overdraft back into a positive balance, and then I have not been in my overdraft since. But I want to show you all of the transactions that went on, including buying the van, equipment that I built, all this kind of stuff, pay from work, to show you exactly what happened over that 3-month period to take me from a negative balance in my overdraft and moving out of my apartment to then back into a positive balance by the end of December. Now, one other thing that I want to say to people, yes, I had a high paid job. The reason that I had a high paid job is because I chose to get a high paid job. You can either get a job that you are passionate about, that you like doing, that might not pay you as much. You can get a job that you're qualified for because it's just easier because you're qualified and it might not pay you as much. Or you can choose to get a high paid job. The reason that I say you can choose to get a high paid job is because I did exactly that. I had no experience doing property investment before I applied for a job in London with no experience. I turned up to a job interview and I got the job. So if I can do it, as long as you have got a voice box, you are in the UK, then if I can do it with no prior experience, you can also get a high paid job with no experience. You choose what you would like to do. You either choose to do a job that you're passionate about that might not pay you as much or that you're comfortable with, or you choose to get a job that's going to pay you a lot of money. And the reason that I chose to do that is because I decided I wanted to go traveling the world. I was £24,000 in debt. I went on Gumtree. I applied for this job. I got the job. It got me out of debt. I then put the remainder of the money into funding my vehicle. But I moved out of my apartment when I had no money in the bank to then go live in this vehicle to save even more money so I could go traveling the world even sooner. And I want to show you how you can do the same. Even if you do not have a high paid job, all it means is it will take you longer to get out of your overdraft. But I'm going to show you how. As long as the interest that you are paying on your overdraft or your loan to fund your van, as long as the interest is lower than your apartment is costing you each month, then it's probably a sensible decision and you might want to consider it, because it truly did change my life. It was the 20th of September 2022 that I purchased my van. The van cost me £7,200. I bought it from Manchester. My apartment I was living in was in London at the time. Now I cashed just over £1,600 of crypto, so I had no crypto left. I borrowed £3,000 from my friend. The only reason I did that is because I didn't want to max out my overdraft, but I could have maxed out my overdraft if I didn't have someone available to lend me the money. So obviously I was in a fortunate position where someone could lend me the money, but if that wasn't the case, I'd have just maxed out my overdraft. After I purchased the van and spent £7,200 in it, it took me to just over £600 overdrawn after I'd cashed everything, borrowed the money and all the rest of it. Now I still needed to pay road tax, insurance, fuel. Road tax cost me about £290. I think insurance was just over £80 for the first month. Putting a tank of fuel in it, because it was a 4-hour drive from Manchester, was just over £100. I was going to get paid from work on the 28th of September, so I had to wait 8 days. Now I parked the vehicle just outside of my apartment, so there was no cost at the time to park it on the road. I bought a few things that I wanted, like a steering wheel lock, a tracker for the vehicle, but other than that, That's really all of the purchases that I made. Obviously I was still paying apartment prices and this kind of stuff because I was still in the apartment until the following month on the 10th of October. Obviously in September, after I went in my overdraft, that's when I started to get daily charges in my overdraft. Check what type of overdraft and what the charges are. I was banking with Lloyds TSB. When you go in your overdraft with Lloyds, you start to get daily charges. On the 27th of September, the day before I got paid, I was just over £1,500 overdrawn. I didn't have any savings, I didn't have any other money in crypto or anything like this, so I was literally living in my overdraft. On the 28th of September, I got paid for my work and it was just over £4,800, which then brought me back into a positive balance, and on exactly the same day, I paid my friend back. I transferred him £3,000 and 1 penny. Now, for anyone who knows me, the reason that I do that is because I'll always send 1 penny more, and the reference on that transaction will be 1p for good luck. So that brought my balance down to £150. Now, obviously, I had then another month to wait until I was going to get paid again. I was still living in London, I was still buying food, I still had my insurance, and I was just about to start paying for parking. Basically, on the 10th of October, I moved out of my apartment and I moved into the back of my van. The first purchase that I made was a mattress from Dreams, which cost me £100. Other than that, I was literally living in the back of the van and I was back in my overdraft. And for the remainder of that month, I kept going further and further into my overdraft as I started to buy things. I obviously had living, I had to buy food, all the rest of this kind of stuff. And then basically, I was on the streets of London for 8 days until the 18th of October, and then on the 18th of October I found a parking space on your parking space and I moved into that parking space. I had to pay £300. It was £150 a month, but I had to put a deposit of £150. Now I want to say something here because I did a previous video saying how basically how I lived on this land and I was living in London, and the reason that I did that is because originally when I was living on the streets of London it was out of the ULEZ zone, but then I needed to get somewhere that was closer to my work, and I found a place that was only 2 miles away from my work, which was in Mile End, and my work was in Liverpool Street, so it was perfect. Now it's funny, I've had people say to me on a previous video when I say you can do it without tax, insurance, MOT as long as it's on private land, and I said you have to obviously find the land, and I gave the website, and then people put a comment on there, you just have to find the land. Well, yes, funny enough, land is not going to fall out of the sky and then just suddenly miraculously appear under your van. Believe it or not, you do have to do some work and you have to actually do some research to find a piece of land. That's exactly what I did, and it took me about 24 hours to find a piece of land. But you are going to have to find a piece of land to park it on. Throughout that month I made a few purchases. You can see I went to TK Maxx. I believe this was for bed sheets, pillow covers, this kind of stuff. I had my final apartment payments and I was obviously still living, paying for food, this kind of stuff. Standard living stuff basically. On the 27th of October, which was the day before payday again, I was £2,400 into my overdraft. Now obviously this is when I was incurring the highest amount of daily interest. I think it was about £2.50, £2.60 per day. That was the most that I was ever in my overdraft during this period of the build. And on the 28th of October, I got paid just over £5,000. Throughout November, I continued with the build. You can see I was going to Wix, I was going to B&Q. I believe that I was buying my windows at this time, potentially my roof fan. I was definitely doing a lot of the woodwork of the van, insulation, because I started to have mold issues because there was condensation on the roof because I was literally sleeping in the back of a bare van. But all of the money that I was saving from my apartment, I was putting this straight into the van. So as well as saving money, I was investing into my van because I was adding value onto my van. By the time the 27th of November came round, I was minus £980 into my overdraft. So you can see that I wasn't quite as far into my overdraft even though I'd kept building. Yes, this was because I was getting a decent wage. And on the 28th of November, I got paid just over £3,600, which brought me back into a positive balance. Throughout December, I continued to build the van. I was buying things on eBay, still going to Wix, still going to B&Q, but I continued to put money into the van. And I was working on it every evening because my goal was to get this finished as quickly as possible, save as much money as I possibly could, so I could quit my job as early as I possibly could to go traveling the world. And it took me 18 months. By the time the 22nd of December came round, and the reason that I say the 22nd of December is because we were breaking up for Christmas, so we were getting paid on the 23rd of December, I was minus £400 into my overdraft. And on the 23rd of December, I got a decent pay packet and I got paid just over £6,000. That was the last time that I was in my overdraft. It took me out of my overdraft into a positive balance, and I have not been in my overdraft since. Then any other wage packets and money that I made from December 2022 up until I completed the van, which was in about March 2024, any money that I made then went into the van, and I managed to remain into a positive balance. In interest of my overdraft over that period from when I first went into my overdraft on the 20th of September 2022 until I was out of my overdraft on the 23rd of December 2022, which was basically a 3-month period, it cost me about £85 in interest to use my overdraft over that period. The parking cost over those 3 months cost me about £450. I didn't have any other costs. If you take into account my apartment costing me £800 a month, that equates to £2,400 over that 3-month period. Even if you take into account the interest that I paid and the parking for the vehicle, it still means that I saved £1,870, which then obviously went into my van. So I wanted to share this with you guys, exactly how I funded it. Like I said, I know that I had a high paid job, but I truly believe that if you want, you can get a high paid job. If you do not have a high paid job or you're struggling, you can still do this with your job. If you're paying £800 a month on rent, as long as the interest on your loans is less than £800, then you can put that towards a van and you'll still be in a positive balance. It's a really great way for you to get out of debt or save some money, or even put some money that you are paying into your apartment now and put it into a van, which will hold its value as long as you are building and adding value to it. Then you can potentially even make money on the vehicle. This is exactly what I did. This is how I funded my van. This is how I got myself out of debt with my high paid job. This is how I funded the vehicle by borrowing money from the banks with paying interest, whatever you want to call it. This is how I funded the build. This is how I was able to move out of my apartment and save money, and then eventually get enough money behind me to then leave my job and go traveling the world. I hope this has helped people. If you've got any questions, just let me know. If not, I will see you on the next video.